Today, I am going to show you how to build 3 different teams to beat Azimanak 13, but I'll also teach you how to build your own stable team and one-shot team to tackle this challenge. The first team we're going to look at here is a free-to-play team. 3/4 of this team can be obtained through the connection, with the 4th hero being a 3-star hero that is quite easy to obtain. The first hero on this team is Falconer Clury, who is capable of filling several roles in this comp. She is your tank, which means that she is best used on an Aureus to help soak up some of the damage from your team, but her S3 also provides you with a much needed strip and a defense break. Then her passive gives her a nice little heal and a CR push on her S1. The second hero is Angelic Montmorency, who is undoubtedly one of the best PvE heroes in the game. Her job is very simple. She just heals and cleanses to keep your team alive because the boss does tend to land quite a few bleeds on your team. Now in this team, we are going to be running 2 DPS heroes, and the first one is going to be Free Spirit Tieria. With the addition of her exclusive equipment, this makes her a very strong hero for this hunt. Her S3 does some respectable damage while providing us with an additional defense break on top of flurries, but her S2 is what makes her so great in this hunt. It's a pretty strong AoE attack that you can use to clear the eggs, but with the correct exclusive equipment, it also strips, and not only that, if you land a kill on the eggs, it will reset the cooldown. The second DPS and the final member of this team is going to be Kana. The reason I chose Kana to fill this last slot is because her S3 hits all targets and strips, with her S1 also hitting multiple targets. This helps you clear the eggs more efficiently, removing the defense buff from the boss. But her S3 also provides a speed buff for your team while also buffing the attack for herself. And her S2 passive also gives a raised dual attack chance for more damage. This is why I recommend you keep her skills on instead of turning them off. Even though her S1 does do more damage than her S3, you want her to be able to switch stances with her passive for more speed and dual attack chances, as well as the chance to strip on the S3. And now, let's take a look at some stats and gear. You don't need a lot of speed for this hunt, but as usual, the more speed the better. Now you do want to make sure you are running at least 65% effectiveness on your strippers and defense breakers. And strangely enough, you do want a little bit of bulk on your heroes because of the bleeds. I do recommend around 10k HP on each hero if you want to have a stable team. Now my Flurry's gear is incredibly simple. You just throw some decent speed on her so she can rotate her skills, and 65% effectiveness on her so she can reliably strip and defense break. Now you do want higher HP on her because you will be equipping her with Aureus, so she needs to have a large enough HP pool to absorb your team's damage without dying. And here is my Momo. She is insanely easy to gear for PvE. Because of her skill tree, you will need at least 100% effect resistance. The more the better, of course, because you do want to avoid getting silenced by the boss. Her heals are scaled off of the target's max HP, so giving her an insanely high amount of HP won't really matter that much. But you do want some decent speed on her so she can rotate her skills so she can heal and cleanse more often. This is also why I highly recommend you run Magahara's Tome on her as an artifact. For Tieria, I do recommend you stack a lot of DPS stats because you will need her to help clear the eggs and also deal damage to the boss. But because she is your secondary defense breaker and stripper, you also need 65% effectiveness on her. And as I mentioned before, you want a bit of HP on her so you can guarantee that you can survive through those bleeds. For artifacts, you will want to run DDJ, Daydream Joker, to deal more damage to the boss. And lastly, here is my Kana. Kana has one very simple job, and that is to deal damage. So just stack a ton of DPS stats on her with a little bit of HP and call it a day. You don't need effectiveness on her because her passive and her awakenings provide her with enough effectiveness already. And if you want, you can stack some speed on her, but I would rather focus on damage with a DDJ artifact equipped on her because her S2 passive does give her a decent chance of dual attack as well as some extra speed. Again, this is a free-to-play team and incredibly easy to obtain. Though Kana does take a few extra steps to obtain through the connection, I think that by the time you reach the point where you are farming A13, you should be able to obtain her quite easily. Now this also goes the same with with the gear. You may think that my free-to-play team is unreasonable because I have reforged gear on my DPS heroes, therefore making this team not free-to-play friendly at all. But I'll come right back at you and say that if you are unable to hit these high stats with reforged gear on your heroes to do a 13, then you should probably go back and farm Wyvern 13 some more, because the gear that drops from that hunt is much more valuable than the gear you can get from Azimanak 13. And if you do need help with Wyvern 13, I'll have a link to my guide in the description below as well as at the end of this video. Now the second team here is the team that I am personally running at this moment. For my main DPS, I'm running Vildred. I could also run a Landy here, but because my Landy is geared for PvP, it is much easier to gear my Vildred solely for this hunt rather than having to switch my Landy's gear and artifact around just to do PvE content. He's quite simple to gear, just throw on a bunch of DPS stats with some speed and it is good enough. I'm using DDJ on my Vildred for higher damage on the boss. I could run Dust Devil or RNL to try to get some extra hits in there, but that's RNG dependent, while DDJ has no RNG to it, making it a much more consistent artifact. As a main tank, I'm running Adventurer Raz. He's holding Bastion of Pelusia at the moment because he is geared for PvP. Ideally, you do want your tank on Aureus to soak the damage for your team. I like using him instead of Flurry because he has a dual attack, which allows my Vildred to deal a ton of damage. I'm also not as reliant on having a secondary stripper or a defense breaker, even though he is capable of doing both of those things. But instead, I'm delegating those duties to Asaria. Her S3 contains a strip, defense break, and unbuffable. If you are able to land the unbuffable, then you don't need to worry about the boss getting the berserk buff. And her S1 does also contain a 2-turn defense break, so she alone can handle the strips and the defense breaks. I'm running her on Sashay so that I can get the pushes every time an egg dies, but you can also run her on Infinity Basket if you really want to. Then as my healer, I'm running Tama. She has the big heals, cleanse, strip, attack buff, and a dual attack. I think she is hands down the best healer for Azimanak 13. I do have her on Wondrous Potion Vial for some extra cleanses, though you can run her on an assortment of different artifacts like Magaharas, Idol's Cheer, Touch of Rekos, or even Shamadra's Staff. So now if you feel that you are getting value out of this video, please consider dropping a like and subscribing so you won't miss out on the next one. It would be greatly appreciated. So now you may not have all the heroes I have to build a strong Azimanak 13 team, but there are quite a few variety of heroes you can use for this hunt. You just need to mind the mechanics and you'll be able to find success. The requirements for your team are as follows. You need a defense breaker, at least one AoE DPS hero, a stripper, and a healer/cleanser. However, it's not that simple. The mechanics of this boss excludes a lot of heroes from being viable options. You must not have 3 or more debuffs on the boss when he is attacked, or he will cleanse, reset cooldown, get an attack buff, take an extra turn, then attack you. And you will also want to mind the amount of buffs on your team. If he attacks you with Hellish Cut and the target has 3 or more buffs on them, it will activate Death Trap, which will strip and silence the entire team. So here is a quick list of viable DPS heroes you can use in your team. Kana, Elfelt, Mercedes, Yuna, Vildred, Bellona, Landy, Vivian, Free Spirit Tierra, Straz, and Aiden. Of course, there are probably other heroes you can throw in there. You just need to make sure you have at least one AoE DPS capable of clearing the eggs. As for tanks, it's very simple because I find Flurry and Araz to be the best ones and everybody already has those heroes. Then for healers, I would actually just stick with a Momo or Tama. Your secondary DPS or supporter will just depend on who you decide to take as a tank, healer, and DPS. Just be sure that your combination of heroes does not exceed the debuff limit and you don't consistently have too many buffs on your team. Honestly, I think the best option is Free Spirit Tierra unless you are able to run Asaria, but maybe a Luluka on Violin with a second EE could work as well. Now it is going to take a lot of trial and error, but eventually you will be able to tweak your team and your stats into a successful hunt team. And even though immunity sets are less popular than they used to be with the rise of pen sets and strippers, I still think it's a very valuable gear set because it's just an extra layer of 15% RNG. And the rage sets do aid you in being able to clear hunts faster and build more one-shot teams. So speaking of one-shot teams, here is the one that I slapped together real quick just to do some runs for the time and the win rate. The team I used in this example is Bellona, Vivian, Lorena, and Watcher Shuri. Bellona's job here is to defense break the first wave and also defense break the boss. In this particular team comp, you're going to need Bellona to move very fast because she is going to need to be able to move twice before Lorena and Watcher Shuri move a single time, but also to preferably move again before the Vivian uses her S2. Vivian's job here is to provide the attack buff to everyone and clear the first wave. You must guarantee that she kills a target so she can reset her S2 with Time Matter, which then allows her to clear the eggs on the boss phase. Lorena's job is very simple. She needs to use her S3 on the boss to deal as much damage as possible. You do want her to move before Watcher Shuri. The reason for that is because if Watcher Shuri moves first, the boss will end up getting a stack of Berserk, which will raise his defense, causing Lorena to do less damage. And that is why you need Watcher Shuri to move last, because his S3 ignores 100% of the target's defense. And his job, as you know, is also incredibly simple. He just needs to S3 on the boss and blow his face off. Now, I've never run an A13 one-shot team before, and honestly, I was not a fan of this team at all. There are way too many RNG factors in this team to cause failure. First of all, you need to defense break the front mob in the first wave to guarantee that Vivian can clear with her S2. Then you also have to hope that when the mobs move, they don't all target the same hero and completely murder him. And then you get another layer of 15% RNG on the boss because you have to land the defense break for you to be able to get the kill. So that is 3 layers of RNG that you have to get through. So I would suggest a team more along the lines of Leo, Vivian, and AoE DPS than Watcher Shuri. Your AoE DPS can be someone like Celestial Mercedes or BBK, or whatever other AoE DPS that you can find. The reason for that is because you are able to clear the first wave without the need of a defense break. So with this setup, you no longer have the RNG of landing the defense break on the first wave. And because of Leo's opening S3, you have a good chance of stunning multiple targets, which means you don't have to just hope that you don't randomly get wrecked on the first wave, because he is most likely going to stun at least one target. This ends up cutting the RNG to only one layer, and that is being able to land the defense break on the boss. Another good thing about this is that you can use the same Vivian and Leo that you probably already have set up for your B13 one-shot team, as long as their secondary AoE DPS is able to provide enough damage to clear the first wave. So if you are struggling with being able to clear Azimanak 13 with these teams, then you might actually want to head back to Wyvern. And if you need help with clearing Wyvern, you can check out this guide right above my face. Or if you want some hero guides, check out the playlist right over there. But I hope you guys enjoyed this. If you did, please like and subscribe. Thank you for hanging out with us, and I'll see you guys next time, man. Bye.